Welcome to Inner Voice of Knowing podcast. I'm Kaye, a shamanic leadership coach and healer, guiding you through life with a foot in both worlds. When you understand the terrain of the inner landscapes, the mental, emotional, spiritual, and energetic, you will become the leader within your physical life, both personally and professionally. After all, the power of change is in your hands. Let's get this journey started. I'm always excited to have every guest that I'm on because they're either divinely sent to me or I just know that their voice is in alignment with the podcast, and Lorna Gale's voice certainly is. We've gotten to know each other a little bit across the oceans, across the globe, and I've been a guest in one of Lorna's platforms, and the authenticity that I feel with this woman is just felt in bucket loads, waves of it. Lorna Gale, and I love this when I read this, so I'm looking down to read this to make sure I get it right. A sex and spirit alchemist of the feminine-led life, and a spirit-led path that calls us home through the wisdom and leadership of the feminine and the honoring of masculine, sacred masculine presence. And I love that, Lorna, because, you know, a lot of women's voices working in that arena spend a lot of time talking about the feminine. So I'd really like to welcome you to this platform, your voice to this platform, your presence to this platform, because I think this is going to be a wonderful conversational journey. And I don't want to read out the rest because I want people to discover who you are and your voice within this platform. Welcome, Lorna.
Thank you so much, Kaye. It's wonderful to be here, and I'm excited for this. And I agree with you that so often there's that emphasis on the feminine, and I look forward to all that's going to come forward in our conversation today.
Yeah, thank you, Lorna. You've been journeying this for 30 years as a teacher, and you've got, you know, the healing element to you. Speaking, award-winning speaker, and the erotic and spiritual experience. Speak a little bit into your journey that's brought you, you know, to this point.
Sure, I'm happy to. You know, it's that aspect of where we're so often taught that sexuality is here and there's have to be a certain way, or it's that connection to what is often not necessarily spiritual, but religion, and how we're taught there's that it has to fit in this way, and if it doesn't, there's, you know, hell to be paid type thing. And it's just, that's what I grew up in. And this whole idea of even save yourself for marriage, I recognize looking back and how often that's where our wisdom comes, right? Is that looking back. But I realize how that aspect of save yourself for marriage, how that just really disconnected me from my sexuality. Mm-hmm. And as I had my spiritual journey through the gift of a health crisis, the spiritual journey started to come forward. And then it was after that, the sexual experience and what I call my midlife sexual awakening, that journey started to happen. And it wasn't until, you know, probably even, I'm going to say 10 years ago, that it was, okay, time to bring the two of them together in my work. And, you know, in a way that was publicly spoken about. And I would say even in the last 5 years, even more so, because we've been taught, right? No, you know, keep them apart. Yeah. Which is one of those things that I love is how many things we've been taught. No, they're separate, keep them separate. So that's one of the things I love about my work. This being one of them, the sex and spirit aspect of things.
And that's powerful because so much is, I know one of my first coaches was like, you're either spiritual or your leadership. And I had to do that journey to remember what made me become the leader within my own life was spirituality. And we are at a point in life where you can't take the soul, the energy, the spirit out of our physical existence, and that's including our sexuality. And I really love that you're bringing this subject to the table because, you know, a lot of times women and men can be too scared to talk about it. I know that as a more mature woman now, at 60, there are different phases to our sexual growth and our sexual energy. Would you agree?
I do agree. At the early phases, this part about really being in that place of exploration again, if there's that permission, given to do that, other than that it's a shutdown and things are sort of contained. But in those younger years, that there's that curiosity, learning about one's body, learning about these feelings, these urges, these things that catch our attention,
Yeah.
that aspect of things, and looking at, and then there's that time where the body's going through all these different changes, and you get the aspect of the hormonal changes, and then that urge to nest in and, to be that for a lot of people, not for everybody,
Yeah.
that mothering, nurturing part that happens. And after a while, sort of settling in, whether it's career, motherhood, there's all kinds of things that are being birthed. And at some point, it seems like at that 40 type frame, whether it's been only career, whether it's been only motherhood, or a combination of both, there seems to be that place where things start to open up, and that that something starts to say, hey, there's more to life, there's more to this. And that seems to be a big part of it.
Yeah. Do you feel, Lorna, that with this save yourself for marriage belief system, what do you feel that does to us as young women, if anything at all?
That's a huge question, in the sense that I really believe that for myself, I will speak for myself. And as I have numerous times voiced this, I get all kinds of nods, whether it's people that are, when I'm doing lives, whether I'm doing different podcasts and the responses, or when I'm working with people directly in retreats and workshops, there's this nod of the head that for me, it meant that I took it in that my body isn't mine, and my sexuality isn't mine. It belongs to the husband. It belongs to the marriage. Ooh. And so right away, there's this disconnect.
Yeah. Yeah. And what does that disconnect do to women? If anyone's listening and feeling that same thing, and they may not even have realized it until you've actually said the words, and that energy has just landed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I was not aware of it at the time. It was only after my sexual awakening when I looked back and I thought, why was I so disconnected? And I think that's a part of it. We're disconnected from our sexuality. I think there's also that part of this aspect of exploring our bodies are for ourselves. It's that idea of, okay, well, if I do, there's something wrong with me, or I have to do it quick and quiet, quick, quiet, and in the dark is what I say.
Yeah.
Or there's this part about, well, I have to do it with another person. I can't with myself. So it's this idea that there's all kinds of conflicted ideas, feelings that happen inside, because the body can often just feel like, I want to explore.
Yeah.
But no, it doesn't fit in that way. And so there comes the good girl part of things. Be a good girl, good girls don't do that. And so I think that, again, it really creates a lot of tension within the body. Or if people decide they are going to explore that, and just kind of, I'm going to go do what I want to do. And, I will enjoy my sexuality, that there can often be that sense of, in the background, the guilt that somehow is shameful, because it's so ingrained, Kaye, that I think sometimes we don't realize how deeply it is ingrained. And so even where it seems like there's that freedom, and again, I'm speaking really generally, because there are many people who will explore and just kind of, they feel that alive and it connected into their bodies. And oftentimes it's, I wish I hadn't, or I shouldn't have, or the acts that people choose to do because they think that they are really trying to push around these boundaries, and will do things that actually really aren't even in their own best choices for themselves. They wouldn't really do it except that they're trying to really push through something that, even without being able to name it, there's something there. I'm going to really try to push through to get to it. So,
yeah, I think it's, from my perspective, is, what is driving us Because I know there have been times in life where I thought, I'm free, I'm this, and then I'm looking and there's a different driver. Do you know what I mean? But happening for it. And I know for me, you know, when I first started having sex, I felt like that choice had been taken from me by the male. It wasn't a rape or anything, but it was a setup that I felt I couldn't say no to. It wasn't a choice. And that actually drove a lot, you know, in the background for so long. And that feeling of it belonged to the male. It belonged to the masculine without realizing it at the time. Do you know what I mean? And such a journey. And when I got divorced, there was an element for me, because I'd gotten married young, of one, I became what I termed a born again virgin. I decided that for 3 years, I would not date, I would not be intimate, that I would actually get to know myself on every level, body, desires, you know, so I wouldn't choose the same person and create the same patterns. But that was an amazing experience because I felt like I got to wipe the slate clean from my history and go, well, who am I now? And who am I as a sexual being? Because I drove the sex life in my marriage. It wasn't, you know. So do you think that happens for a lot of women where, again, we're being driven by experiences and you know, deep-seated belief systems? And then that desire, as you say, that calling from the body and from the soul, perhaps, we can't ignore it anymore.
That's true. I would say that, Kaye, that yes, we are driven by those desires of what we've been believing, what we've been taught. And I talk about what we've been taught and what we've caught, because we pick up a lot simply by observing what we're, even, you know, very sensitive to energy, right? You can feel when there's something's just not right that way. And so to be able to, again, if there's that sense of freedom, is it there? And if there is that somewhat sense of freedom, but driven by that, there's this beautiful quote by Audre Lorde that has been a central part of my grounding in this 15 years since my midlife sexual awakening. She says, we tend to think of the erotic, and when I think, first of all, the erotic for me always used to be a dirty word, sort of this idea of, it was, you know, dirty old men and the sexualization, objectification of women. That was my association with it. So again, another further distancing from anything. But her quote is this: we tend to think of the erotic as a quick, tantalizing sexual arousal. I speak of the erotic as that deepest life force energy that moves us in a fundamental way.
Wow, that's beautiful. Can you talk more into this, Lorna? Because I know a lot of people might be thinking, but what does that mean? You know, they can watch a lot of stuff. Even now in the spiritual community, there's a lot, and it's all hand holding and eye gazing, and it almost makes it seem unattainable for people that go, but I'm in a real relationship. It's challenging at times. We argue, we have, do you know what I mean? Can you speak into what you're really talking about when you start to embrace this?
For me, it speaks to the human story, that we are separate from each other. We are separate from divinity. And the journey is to somehow bring those things together. And this idea of finding our partner, finding, you know, that, again, that permission authority, it's that idea that there's something, someone out there. And so this journey of, okay, well, here's a woman, here's a man, you know, they're separate. And, you know, that's what's supposed to go together.
Yeah.
And so this duality is really this part about, I'm gonna pause. I come back to three things that have really become central to how I teach. And this comes from my own experience, is there's mirrors. that when we look in the mirror, we don't see what is, we see the opposite.
Yeah.
And so when we look outside of ourselves, we don't see that. It's actually the opposite, the idea that there's somebody outside of us. And if I am in a female body, and I look out there and I see there's the male, it's kind of like, okay, that's what we're supposed to somehow to get together.
Yeah.
So there's the idea of mirrors, and we can look around us, and what is that mirroring back to me, rather than us, looking out, oh, there's other, right? It's kind of like there is no out there. What is it mirroring back to us? The second one is that of movies, which is the idea of story, that everything that we have gone through to this point is perfectly in place, every situation, every person, to support the role of, in my case, the story of Lorna, this character of Lorna. What's unfolding for her? Where does she get traumatized? Where does she get disconnected? Where does she have her joys? What are all of those journeys that go along the way? And at some point in that journey where there's this idea of everything being separate, it's now all of a sudden we're looking at, we're awakening to there actually is no separate. It is all together.
Mm-hmm.
And so now to be able to, how does that unravel? How do we so I use the title of story unweaver, because we unweave the story of what we've been taught about who we are.
Yes.
So looking at that. Then the third one is to be able to have that of the merry-go-round. And as a child, I remember having on the playground, there was the spinning merry-go-round.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember so many times there were different children that would play on the playground around, spinning that so fast to get it going fast. We'd hop on, we'd hop off, and hang on and see and spin and stuff like that. It was just a riot. Sometimes there were some bumps and bruises along the way. Sometimes there was, the tears, and sometimes just the hilarity of it all. And I remember different times I would go and I would sit in the middle of that merry-go-round, on the hub. And it would just be, no matter how fast it was going, it was just that stillness. It was just that peacefulness. And that's what I say is we have been, that centerpiece is the essence of who we are in our human experience. And when we are caught up in the story of who we are, it's like on that outside, the other, the out there, the traumas, all of the games, the fun, all of the ups and downs of life are out there. And in this journey of coming back home to ourselves, we realize, number one, there is no out there. There is no other. And that even in this idea of male and female, feminine and masculine, again, we still think it's out there. It's just kind of like, no, come on back into the hub of that. Remember that you are the main character. This is all for you. Come on. And to be able to look at even the aspect of the idea of us being separate from our divinity is a story.
Yeah.
The idea that masculine and feminine, female and male, are anything other than a reflection of our oneness within. And in different times when we talk about the feminine, the feminine energies and the masculine energies, it's kind of like we have all of that within us. And I'm saying, yes, let's go one step further. That no matter what body we are in, no matter what genitalia anybody has, that's form. That's masculine.
Yeah.
So all of us right here in this human experience, here we are, they're masculine. And it's that life force energy, that creativity, that flow. There it is, the feminine. So here we are, hidden in plain view, in our wholeness, right here, right now.
Oh, the whole time you're speaking, one, I can so relate to the visual because I used to play on that same thing and find that center all the time and just felt such incredible peace and balance.
Yeah.
But it was just washing over me, Lorna. And what a beautiful way to weave that tapestry through the power of your words and imagery to create such a deep resonance of it making sense.
Yeah, thank you. And as it just from my own experience, it just keeps, different awarenesses just keep coming. And it was actually an interesting thing, Kaye, that that in this journey, that it was actually through looking at a whole aspect of the feminine and mass. I look at things from the feminine-led life. And some people will say, well, does that mean a female-led relationship? That might be where it is, where it starts. That might be where it ends. But ultimately what that's doing is reflecting to us that it's the feminine, the spirit-led life.
Yeah.
That our whole journey of, we talk about the dark night of the soul, that idea of, the ego death, all of those things, that's the death of the sense identity of who we are as humans. That thinking, oh, we're human, we're here. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like, no, that's what's dying, that sense of identity of us being human, as opposed to spirit being here as us.
Just brings us back to the I. The I am. And I love the fact that you're talking about this in terms of energy, and that we are made up of both. And I've never heard anyone say before that just even having the physical form is the masculine. And I think, words have power, and it's just so powerful for it to be spoken like that, so that we can all settle into, we're not talking about men and women, we're talking about the masculine and the feminine. Mm-hmm. And that means we're all rising into that awareness. We're all being invited and called into that deep-seated understanding. What is it different, the journey that you take a woman on to the man? Are they carrying, we talked about shame and guilt, are they carrying different parcels with them?
Well, certainly in terms of the physicality, we have the different hormones, right, that will impact what happens in that vehicle, if you will.
Yeah.
That what I find when people come to work with me, primarily people in a female body will come saying, I want to connect to my sexuality, I want to connect to my body. Men who arrive in male bodies come to me, I want to be the best that I can be for my wife, my partner, my girlfriend. That's where early on it was kind of like, I'm seeing this pattern here. And so it started to be this, okay, little by little, it was being shown to me and guided. And so how do I work with people? It really will vary in the sense that, starting with where they want. For women primarily, or people in a female body, will come to me, and it becomes this journey of empowering them.
Yeah.
Helping them to, what's it like to be able to have your voice, to be able to say what you want, to be able to say yes, to be able to say no, say maybe, I need more information. What is that like? To be able to know that you can stand up, you can show up, you're never too much. Yeah. You are always the perfect enoughness. And, that you are, I'm just going to see what's coming. I'm getting just shivers here right now. You are the embodiment of life itself. And when we start, and I very deliberately have been all these 15 years specifically talking about female and men, males, women, all of that. And in my circles, in my professional circles, I've been sometimes judged about that. Lorna, what do you mean? Like, we've got transgender, we've got, like, we've got gays, we've got the lesbians, we've got, everybody on the whole spectrum of, and I'm saying, I choose to do that because that's a part of my work, is to be able to say, let's start at the duality because that's what we believed. And now, okay, now we can start a place here. Now, come on. And so for each person, it's actually, I start with where they're at. And for some women, it is to be able to step into their power. What's it like to really own their voice? For some women, it's that ability, can they feel at home in their bodies? Which means the masculine? Can they come to be at peace with their masculine?
Yeah.
But it's not always seen that way, right? Because when we see female body, we think, I want to connect. I've always been in my masculine, that do, action, But to feel at home in your body, that's a part of connecting to the masculine, the form part of this relationship. Men who have grown up, number one, that they're supposed to be tough, don't cry.
Yeah.
Be
my
don't be a
little
wuss.
man, they're saying to a 2-year-old or a 1-year-old. Yeah.
Exactly. That's right.
Yeah.
And so for the men, they're taught, toughen up, big boys don't cry, don't be a wuss, you throw like a girl. So right away from early age, they are taught that the feminine girls, women, are less than, and you certainly don't want to be less than. That's not who you are. Toughen up. And so in both places, when women are taught not to be sexual, or that's a slut, men are taught not to be, or they're taught not to be emotional. So but they can be a stud, right? So this whole idea of women are emotional, but don't be sexual. Men are taught don't be emotional, but you are sexual. So right away, we're disconnected from some aspect of ourselves that is very innately a part of us. We come from sex, so why would we shut it down? We are emotional. That's how we do it. We feel. The gift of being human is to feel. Why shut it down? So at some level, each one is shut down, disconnected. And so that's the journey of, can we come back to and connect to the feminine and the masculine within, both, no matter what body we're in. And for the men, it's not only that aspect of the feminine, that flow, that nurturing part of things. There's also that part about they don't know what it's like to receive. I have so many times, Kaye, said in terms of whether it's to do with sexual engagement between male and a female, or even different times at doctors' offices, whatever. But I've often said that men would penetrate very differently if they knew what it was like to be penetrated.
It's so interesting when you started to say that, Lorna, because I was thinking also, men feel like they have to perform, right? But then women get disappointed if they're not performing the right way. But then, and this has come from lots of conversations with friends and women over the years, but they're also not speaking up and saying, hey, I need this, or I like this, or just do this. So it's sort of a no-win situation for many.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's where I love coming back to the feminine, the feminine-led life. That if we look at it, what's outside, what's that like? And again, looking at what we have experienced, where there's the, right from God, the masculine, that's the male that's up high, the women that's down, is what if, and I look at that as a mirror. We see not what is, but the opposite. Okay, here we go. Bring it back up. And as we can come back into what I say, a right relationship with our true essence, then it's the feminine is what's there, is the feminine rising. But if we don't allow for and honor the presence of the masculine and the masculine's role in this human spirit experience, then the feminine rising and women's empowerment is for nothing.
Wow.
Because spirit does not need anything to be. It simply is. To have this human experience, that's where it needs the form. That's where it needs the masculine. And so when we come back into a right relationship, a right experience, if you will, and I'm not saying a right and wrong, but a right as in the boat, it's not, it's sinking, right?
Riding
Let's right the boat and bring it. And in that case, when we have the feminine spirit, the feminine led life, all of a sudden, when a woman is empowered, that all of a sudden she can say, and the masculine says, wow, now I know where I fit in. Now I know where I belong. Now I know where my energy can get channeled. Because it's the typical thing of the heart of the masculine is to serve, to provide, please, protect.
Yeah.
Now it can do that because the feminine is saying, the woman is saying, okay, this is what I want. This is what I need. Great. I can do that for you.
It really feels like a coming home. to our
Yeah.
true essence. And in that, then there's freedom. We're not pushing
Yeah.
back on the natural order, the natural flow, the natural way of being.
Yeah.
It's so beautiful. How did that awakening start for you? What did that come from that led you into
Mm.
this beautiful divine work?
Mm. As I shared a bit ago, it was my spiritual journey that started first, and that
Yeah.
came through the gift of a health crisis. And in that time, first of all, I'd gone to a health fair, and I was coming out. A friend I knew was chattering, and she said, just out of the blue, perfectly, of course,
Yeah.
we're not humans having a spiritual experience. We're spiritual beings having a human experience. And I kind of, what? What do you mean? Like I
Yeah.
almost got mad. Like what? I've just had all my 30 years of believing otherwise,
Yeah.
and 35, 40 years by then, I think it was. Um, that wait a minute, I've been on this quest to try to get someplace, try to make that connection. And so that really, wait a minute. So that's where the gift of my body had known that was coming, spirit had prepared or created that story that's where my body would go, that I could be so unwell healthily that I needed to stay away from my teaching career at school for that
Yeah.
year. And that's where I could just dive in, and the experiences, the awarenesses that happened of just, okay, here we go. The light that seemed apart, no, it was never gone. So those awakenings that were happening there. And then when my girls were, my former husband and I have two beautiful daughters. When they had left home, I thought, I need to go and explore. I need to go and find out, who am I? And so that's where I started taking some different retreats and workshops and trainings, and to find out for the first time at the age of 47, I was able to acknowledge I am a sexual erotic being.
Yeah.
And it wasn't, she for he. It was, can I be here whole in myself, that I don't need to go looking for somebody else? And then when I was taking one of my professional trainings, sexological bodywork, that one of the times that I had taken that, we were students giving other students, like in our class, giving workshops.
Yeah.
And one of those was a spanking workshop. And I kind of thought, oh my goodness, spanking for me had been a form of punishment.
Yeah.
And so this idea of like, what are we going to do? Like this, I was really not comfortable going into it. Saying, okay, just breathe and go into it, And so on hands and knees, one on hands and knees, and the other one, just kneeling beside and just holding the body close, and connecting. And got, this is different. And then all of a sudden, and just sort of the pressing on the bottom and on the thighs, and then all of a sudden smack. And it was kind of like, oh my God. I just started to laugh. And I thought, that's fun.
Uh-huh.
And so in that case, it was just started to shift my perspective about what happens in terms of the whole aspect of pain as a form of punishment.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what awakened actually my inner Dom. And so for several years, being as a femdom, in both in my own relationship as well as professionally.
Yeah.
And also I went on to be a bondage practitioner and then a trainer. And what I found, Kaye, was that in my work, what I found was that, and I worked primarily with men, they would just come, and it was just enough, like they would just kneel, be on their, their knees and just, at my feet. And that was just that place of just being in surrender, just to get out of their head, to be there. What does the feminine want? And then there was one man who had been before we had ever met, he had been very much involved in a sisterhood of femdoms and their male partners. And I remember one time, well, numerous times in different conversations that we had, he shared with me how every one of those men would do whatever they could, even when it was difficult, even when it was challenging, even when it stripped away their sense of privilege, even when it stripped away their sense of a right to their own bodies. They all wanted to do that because they wanted to please. And there was one time as he was sharing that's where, one of those moments of like, that's our spiritual journey. Those dark nights of the soul, these quests when the masculine is slowly losing that identity, those dark nights of the soul, that's the masculine aspect of us that is giving way to and kneeling at the feet of the feminine, where the form, our human, is kneeling and being into this place of the recognition of the spirit. But then that's the twist of it. It's not that the form is doing it, but that's what dies away, and the realization that comes, I was never human in the first place.
Yes. I feel like you're giving permission, which is what I had to give myself, probably at a similar stage when I'd left my husband and I was in my late 30s, and giving myself permission for all the things that I'd held inside of myself that I wanted to experience. And suddenly go, they must be sitting in me this whole time for a reason to express and explore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. You know, when you say that, it reminds me of the story of Hansel and Gretel that I like to refer to. That there's one version where, as they are leaving, Hansel drops breadcrumbs along the way. And when it comes time to go home, they can't get home because the birds have eaten all the breadcrumbs. The other version is that if he drops pebbles along the way, and when it comes time from having their adventure in the forest, they just follow the pebbles home. And that's what I say is every one of those things, like you talk about, when there's those parts of us that we do it, there's that remembrance, because that is what's there. It's just somehow it's been covered in trauma. It's been covered in shame. It's been covered in you can't, you shouldn't, be quiet, all of those things. Don't be this. And whether that's for males or females, right? Whatever body we're in, it's what we've been taught. So these awakenings that come back to, you know, for a male to be able to embrace, you know, unapologetically, be able to cry, to be able to feel, to be able to be in that feminine aspect of themselves, of creativity and flow and surrender.
Bringing
And it's
back to their heart. And I think you said this in what you said, in what you sent me. Yeah. Which is what women want to see with their men too, isn't it? Coming back into their heart. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is such a powerful conversation. So you were saying about bondage, was it? Where was that in my notes?
Bondage.
Bondage. Can you elaborate on that, please?
Sure. Bondage is a body of work that is trademarked. It's created by Jaylene Bennis, and she's got her married name now, and but Jaylene Bennis was how she was known. And she created it. It's basically, as she said, there's nothing new in bondage. It's a weaving together of massage, erotic massage, and BDSM.
Yeah.
And the way it's woven together is just creating this a way that takes people into their bodies, takes them into the familiar and into the unfamiliar, to let them experience different emotions, different sensations. So it's something that's available. As a practitioner, I mostly see men, and again, it's those men who are coming wanting to get out of their head, stop making decisions. I want to be able to feel. I want to be able to let the weight of the world be off my shoulder. Good, come. You know, I'll put some restraints on my table, and and let you feel. And as I say to people when I go to put their collar on, this is my collar, and number one, my commitment is to care for you. So, safe words are in place.
Yeah.
And I'm going to take you to places that you maybe have never gone before. And what I want you to do is to feel as fully as you can.
You talk about it, Lorna, in a way where it feels healing.
Yeah.
And I think that's bringing a new set of eyes to it for many listeners.
It's absolutely. It is absolutely healing. And different things can be practiced in different ways. This is one of the ways, one of my healing modalities. It's how I use this work that I do. And it's not because I set out to do that. It was just, that's what the realization what was happening. When I remember one time there was one man that I had on my table for a bondage session,
Mm-hmm.
and he said at the end, he sat up and he said, "What did you just do?" I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "What did you just do to me? Words are my world, and I have no words for what I just experienced."
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Were you guided by somebody else in this awakening for yourself, or is this a journey that you took?
This has been my journey unfolding. Yeah.
There was a post that I wrote about owning a part of my journey, and I feel like I'm understanding your response to that now.
Mm,
And what a powerful and beautiful journey, but at times it must have been challenging when you're being guided, but guided by an unseen presence and your own
mhm,
heart and your own soul through something like this so that you could actually bring it in this perspective with this energy, with such heart and soul and a sense of coming home
mhm,
and in that gaining freedom. Thank you. Thank you for the
mm,
journey that you've taken. Thank you for bringing a voice to it
mm,
and doing it with such grace, Lorna,
mm. Thank you.
which I
Thank
feel the way that you communicate it and deliver it is what also makes it seem incredibly acceptable, isn't the right word, but just where someone can embrace it because that's the energy of where you're coming from
you.
with it.
Mm.
It's something more, it's sexual, but it's something more than sexual. Does that make sense? That's how
Absolutely.
I'm receiving in the way that you're delivering it.
Hmm.
And
Hmm. Yeah.
that is
And I
just
and
so beautiful. Like an
yeah.
invitation,
Mm,
you
mm,
know?
yeah. And I see that in many ways there's that mostly when the people that come to me, there's that soul calling. There's that soul
Yeah.
calling to something more, whether it's their own personal awakening, whether it's to their work in the world, or both, and maybe they're one and the same.
Yeah.
But that the sexuality is the portal to that place where they feel disconnected, that place where they feel that conflicted piece within, how it's showing up in relationship. Like there's just something's not clicking. I'm not happy. That's when those things start to happen more and more, it'll be okay, it's time. It's sort of to use that portal of the sexuality
Yeah.
into connection to their body. But let's keep on going. Let's keep on coming. Keep on
Yeah.
coming.
Infused with all that sacredness
Yeah.
and all
Yeah.
that purpose. What's for someone listening to this going, oh my gosh, that's me. Where do I start? What advice would you have for someone that's feeling that deep calling?
Mm. I would say what you just said, there's a key in there, and that's to feel. If they're feeling that deep calling, good, feel it.
Yeah.
That part, so awaken to that aspect of being able to feel, because on so many levels we've been taught not to feel, or some things shouldn't be felt, some things are too intense, things are dangerous. Even the idea of labeling what we feel
Yeah.
is a way of disconnecting from what we're
Yes.
feeling. So I
Yeah.
say, let the words deliver you to what's being there, what's being felt, and let the words dissipate like a cloud and come in and feel. So I think that's a big part of it. And one of the ways that two places where I invite people to start, because they don't need me to do this. They don't need you. They don't need a partner. They don't need anybody else.
Yeah.
It's just let themselves feel the sensation, physical sensations, emotional things, let themselves feel it as fully as they can. And, and then even from a physical sensation, I say, move from functional touch. That all happens, right? We get dressed, we do all of these things, brush our teeth, we eat.
Mm-hmm.
The functional touch is take something as simple as when you're shampooing your hair. We shampoo,
Yeah.
rinse, rinse, rinse. Slow down and let yourself feel that sensation.
Yeah.
Oh, but it feels kind of good. Good. Let it feel good. This feels kind of weird because why would I touch myself? Why wouldn't you touch yourself?
Children
And just
do
let
it all the
yourself,
time.
Exactly.
stroking themselves. And I don't mean just sort of intimately, I mean they do,
Hmm.
and they just do it innocently because there's no guilt or
Exactly.
shame yet. But, just
Right.
touching themselves and just, I know my kids always used to love to do that tickle thing up and down the
Yeah.
arm.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
natural. I think sometimes we need to remember how we were when we were really young, before we
Hmm.
took on all these layers of experience and guilt and
Hmm.
shame,
Yeah.
and just
Yeah.
remember the pure innocence of the expression of it.
Hmm. Hmm.
What have you ever worked with people that are sort of aging, and then, women on the other side of menopause, and
Hmm.
men that aren't
Hmm.
functioning as well as they once used to when they were young and virile?
Hmm.
Is it
Yeah.
the same
I
advice
have.
for them?
I have. It's actually been fascinating because when we were talking about earlier the different phases of, our
Yeah.
connection to our bodies and our sexuality, and I stopped at the age of 40, and talked about that type of awakening. And after that, there's this time where there is absolutely this time, this opportunity for women to just really, as they continue to open and to blossom.
Yeah.
And I actually think early on in my profession as a somatic sexologist, I had a woman who arrived to me and she was in her 70s.
Lovely.
And she said, please help me shut this down. She said, it's just getting in the way. I said, okay. So we went into session, and it was her intent to just sort of let it go, let it wash away so she wouldn't be bothered by. And after our session, she said, shut it down. Why would I do that? It's awake. Help me to keep it awake and stuff. And it was just really beautiful. And well into her 80s, she was still as a a creative, a world renowned creative. She was doing her work in that way, and she would actually be in her what I call personal erotic practice. She would
Yes.
actually engage in her personal erotic practice while she was doing her creations, and they just
Wow.
flourished and things. And it was just amazing. And interestingly, for men, it seems like no matter what age, that men come to me and they say, "Yeah, I'm having problems."
Yeah.
And interestingly, what I will do is I'll either with my, when I'm doing hands-on, um, I'll take a little switch or something like that, and I'll smack, and all of a sudden, boing, there's no problem. It's that idea of
Wow.
it needs to be controlled. It
Yeah.
needs to have somebody in charge of. And so that's for the majority of men who arrive to me, it's that there is, they shift into this idea that I need coaching. There's something wrong with me too. Oh, I just need to be into that place of surrender because that's what is that life force energy for them.
Is that the healing, or is it past trauma, or is it both? Or is
I
it that
think it
they
can.
just need to be present in
Mhm,
these kinds of experiences?
mhm. I think it's probably a good combination of all of that, Kay.
Yeah.
Yeah, a combination of of jolting. Sometimes it jolts them out of their sense of their identity of how they're supposed to be. You talked earlier about so much often it's a performative type thing. It's kind of like,
Yeah.
no, let go of that idea. So it's this beautiful when you talk about healing, it's exactly it. It's healing, letting everyone, doesn't matter what parts are between your legs. It's
Yeah.
this healing that gets to happen as you come into your wholeness and find out it doesn't matter what anybody else does. If that's what you would like to do, as long as it's, not like, as long as it's consensual
Yes.
and it's not involving children and animals, then whatever you choose to do, go for it. You know, like, and I get so many people ask, like, is it normal? I say, do you like it? Do you want to try it? Then it's good for you. It doesn't matter. And I often say that you've probably seen that post as well, right? Mommy, what's normal? It's a setting on the dryer, right?
Yeah.
And so letting go of that idea of normal, it's just kind of, it doesn't matter. There is no normal. There is only you. What do you want to explore? What is true for you? And what's true for you now maybe wasn't true before, and it maybe not true later on. But what is true for you right now? What do you want to explore? What do you want to try?
And don't be led by other people's judgments. I mean, over all the years I've been working with others in varying ways, people will open up and they'll
Yeah.
say things, and some of them have been sexual. And I'm just looking at them smiling, they just look at me. And it's like, if you're waiting for judgment from me,
Yeah.
and you just
Yeah.
watch so much drop away from someone. And I think what you're doing is you're saying, well, you go into, as long as you're not, children and animals and things like that, it's your exploration. It's your
Yeah.
calling coming from a
Yeah.
deeper aspect of you.
Yeah.
And, I know again in my own journey and talking to other people, it's like you don't know what's a fantasy until you bring it to reality. And then you might go, oh no, that was just a fantasy, or wow, that's
Mm-hmm.
part of my reality.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think the work that you're doing is just so beautiful. What do you feel people do by suppressing this, Lorna?
Mm.
By trying to shut themselves down?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I would say many things. Number one, there's the aspect of creativity,
Yeah.
because that's the creative force, right? We are created through sexuality. So there's that creative part that is only it's either shut down or very minimally there, but it's certainly tightened off. It will impact the nourishment of the body to
Mm-hmm.
be able to, because we compartmentalize our sexuality, and it belongs in this case, so to speak, but that's going to impact everything. It will impact what happens with the voice, how the voice is used, and obviously relationships as well, right? But more so, it's to start with this relationship here.
Yeah.
If I can't feel comfortable in my body, if I'm not feeling at home in all of my essence, then I either come from that place of, well, how could anybody else love me, like me,
Yeah.
want me,
Yeah.
if I can't? Or the idea of the opposite is, I need somebody else to love me, want me, tell me I'm worthwhile. And so on so many levels, it disconnects. And again, coming back to that idea of sexuality and spirituality, it disconnects us from that. Whether we call it God, spirit, source, whatever, it's disconnecting us from the whole totality of life itself.
Yeah. I could talk to you forever, Lorna. There's really one other question that just keeps coming into my mind, and I know
Sure.
that then that's
Okay.
something that needs to come out. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
people will be thinking about, where does pornography sit in from your professional perspective?
Mm-hmm. That's a really great question. Lots of different angles to come at this from.
Yeah. Oh, I'm getting
Number
chills now.
one,
I'm
okay,
glad I
good. I'm
asked
glad
it.
you
Yeah.
asked. Yeah. So one angle that it can come from is it speaks to a natural inclination to want to watch, to observe.
Mm-hmm.
What do other people do? What do people do? I'm feeling this. What happens here? So it speaks to a natural part of that. It
Yeah.
can also speak to this aspect of a reinforcement of, and again, things are shifting a bit,
Yeah.
probably in some ways substantially in the porn industry, in terms of, it used to be always one way, right? It was,
Mm-hmm.
male to female, and it wasn't always a positive thing. So that reinforces the masculine,
Yeah.
right, uh, um, hierarchy aspect of things.
Yeah.
And so that reinforced that. It also can speak to this aspect of, well, number one, that we have a judgment, because of that judgment of, you watch porn, there's some right away, there's judgment about it.
Yeah.
But I know that it has also served me, because a part of my awakening was, like, I had never watched porn before, but as we started talking about it, I was actually started to feel drawn to, like, why wouldn't I not want it? Why would I not watch it? Well, because I'm feeling that it's wrong, it's bad. Okay, can I actually go through that? Can I
Mm-hmm.
move through that fear and that judgment and see what's actually there? And I remember one of the ones, like, for me to be able to watch, female and female, like,
Yeah.
okay, well, that's kind of, and I did. And it was actually an interesting thing to be able to recognize, that's really quite lovely.
Mm-hmm.
And so it can be that point of judgment where that's mirroring back to us some part of us that we are disconnected from. It also plays a role in showing how there's much shame around pornography or around our sexuality, because often pornography is done, do it in the dark, don't let anybody know. So it's thickening that what I call the shroud of shame, right? So do it
Wow.
in the dark,
Yeah.
right? I know that many couples, they will watch porn together. Hey, well, let's learn from this. What can we do? That's a different position. Let's
Yeah.
give that a try. And so there's all kinds of different ways to do it. I know that in a part of my training, the way that I've done some things as well is, and another part before I go into this is that doing that can become an obsession. It can be a place of shame. I need to get this off. And it's putting on an emphasis on the idea of ejaculation being the ultimate thing, right? That I have to do this and I have to have these certain visuals. I can't do it. So a part of my training, if we were taught, is number one, feel in the body. If I'm needing to stay in the head and disconnect, it goes from here to the screen to genitals, then the rest of the whole body is disconnected, right? Uh-huh. And so to be able to let yourself feel that, and we actually train people is okay. And I've done this with my clients is, okay, here we've got your porn screen is right there. Good. Okay, go ahead and watch. Good. Okay, now when you feel that, good. Now come back to your body and feel it. Good. Yeah, there you go. Let your whole body use your breath. Feel that.
Okay.
Good. Okay, go back and watch. And we sort of take it back and forth. So it can be used, it can play a role to disconnect ones from its the body.
Yeah.
It can be something that can divide relationships. It can be something that can help you bring back to your body. It can be something that can help to bring relationships closer together. And ultimately, it's what does that do? Why am I doing it in the beginning? And how can I use it to come back home and feel at home in my body?
So how can you use it in a way as a tool to just help or enhance?
Yeah.
Yeah, we need more people like you, Lorna, helping educate others, because I've even heard spiritual men saying it's damaging to the masculine and and it's like the way you've just spoken about it in how it can serve is again incredibly beautiful and looking at it from a completely different perspective. So thank you so much for answering that. Have you got something else to say?
Yeah. I was just going to say that oftentimes, and I think this is on anything of life, that anytime there's something that seems dangerous, wrong, bad, we've been taught, look away from it, go away, turn around, go the other direction. It's bad. We put all kinds of safety guards and judgments around it. And I say, look there, because that, if it wasn't of great value, if there wasn't great truth within, it wouldn't be guarded, it wouldn't be shrouded, it wouldn't be protected so heavily.
Yeah.
So look at those places, because that's where you're going to go into and find your truth. That's where you're going to find what is that connection within.
So powerful. So powerful. I could just keep talking to you forever. And I just think that the subject is just so needed to be brought into the open. Even you saying, well, pornography can have its place and for all these reasons, but it also can disconnect, and it's learning where all of this fits into our journey of wholeness and truth and plugging into our own knowing. And Lorna, given that the podcast is called Inner Voice of Knowing, how has your inner voice of knowing guided you, if you feel that you have your inner voice of knowing?
Absolutely. I would say that that awareness has always been there. It went what I'll call underground. It got hidden for a while, disconnected, hidden. Part of that being feeling is, I remember as a young child feeling very in tune with my body, and okay, something's not right, something's here, whatever, and I remember, I got this ache in my side, and it being appendicitis, but very in tune with my body. And I remember I was called a hypochondriac, so I shut it down, okay. And so being disconnected from my body served me, in my unfolding story to now come out and, to be able to be here, to be able to speak about it. When I left the church, when I had from that time where I would say when that woman, that shock to me, I would say that's when it was sort of like the AED, sort of jolted back into life
Yeah.
from then on. And that was what, 25 years ago. That since then, that's where I recognized the inner voice that had been there, but I was so busy, focusing on, looking outside for the authority, permission, all of that, that I wasn't really listening. I was dismissing this, I think, because of that. No, I'm supposed to be looking outside. I can't. Oh, no. And so now this journey of coming back. So this journey of listening has just been so enhanced and just, the inner knowing is there.
Beautiful. Lorna, thank you so much for coming on, bringing your openness, your authenticity, talking about things that many wouldn't talk about, because I know the power of us as men and as women in learning how to be open, and that vulnerability can be our strength. Because all I've ever experienced, Lorna, and I know it'll happen with this podcast, with people listening to it, it'll get them talking about, and you realize you're not alone.
Yeah.
It's not just you. Others are feeling the same way. Others are thinking the same way. Others are suppressing. And it's not until we bring an openness and an authenticity and a language to all these, it creates the connection, not only within ourselves, but then within each other, and it gives the permission. So I thank you.
That's true.
Yeah, I thank you for what you're doing. I thank you for coming on and being a guest. And I thank you for the divine that has crossed our paths, because there's always been such a resonance. And for the listeners, there will be a link in the description where, if they want to connect with you and perhaps even work with you. Do you only work with people that are present, or do you also work from a distance?
Online. Yeah, work online. Yeah, both. Absolutely online, in person. Primarily right now, it is mostly in our online. So groups and individuals. Yeah.
Beautiful. So that link will be there, listeners, in the bottom of the description. And thank you again, Lorna.
Thank you so much, Kaye.
Join me on my next episode. And if you love this podcast, please subscribe by clicking on the plus button if you're on Apple, or like and follow on Spotify, rate and review, and please share Inner Voice of Knowing with your friends.